I shall take this opportunity to warmly welcome contribution of articles from government experts and legal advisors of member states of ALCO for the forthcoming issue of the journal. Mr. President, allow me also to make an introductory statement on the studies that we are going to unveil today, namely the special study on international law in cyberspace. The resolution adopted at the 54th annual session of ALCO in 2015 directed the Secretariat to study the subject of international law in cyberspace, and I quote, based on deliberation and progress made in the United Nations framework and other forums, with special attention to international law pertaining to state sovereignty in cyberspace, peaceful use of cyberspace, rules of international cooperation in combating cybercrimes, and identification of the relevant provisions of the United Nations Charter and other international instruments related to cyberspace. The resolution adopted at the 2016 annual session pursuant to the deliberation in the first meeting of the open-ended working group on international law in cyberspace further directed the Secretariat to closely follow development in international forums related to governance in cyberspace and cybersecurity, and continue its study on international law in cyberspace, which began in 2015, with a view to assisting the working group to fulfill its mandate. Bearing in mind these mandates, the Secretariat has come up with the present study, which is based on the broad framework as laid down in their first stated resolutions. This study presents a neutral perspective of the present international law applicable to cyberspace with regards to the above-mentioned issues, along with briefly tracing their histories wherever necessary. The study also attempts to briefly summarize the broad views of the member states as stated by them during the discussion on ALCO forums on each of the issues. Lastly, the study provides comments and suggestions for the purpose of bringing clarity to the surrounding many of the issues, as well as propose suitable approaches for some of the issues. As the issues have been extensively discussed between member states over 4 sessions, including 2 working group meetings, the member states are already aware of the tremendous import of this subject today, as well as the nitty-gritties associated with all the issues. Hence, I will come straight to explaining the crux of the study, including how it tackled the issues as described above. It is to be noted that this is only a very brief introduction to the study, as a thorough chapter-wise introduction of the study has already been made at the second open-ended working group meeting, which was held at the ALCO headquarters in New Delhi in February 2017. This study first deals with the nature and characteristics of the cyberspace. This section introduces the study by explaining in brief some of the fundamental theoretical concepts relating to cyberspace, such as the nature of the space in the first place, regulations of the cyberspace, the applicability of international law to cyberspace, cyberspace and the concept of common heritage of mankind, and cyberspace as the 5th domain. Many of the concepts introduced have been explained in greater details in the sections that follow. Thereafter, the study discusses the complicated issues relating to the exercise of the state sovereignty over cyberspace. The cyberspace is no common territory, but a digital domain without real boundaries, which transcends physical space. It discusses what presently the international law says on the rights and limitations of the state sovereignty over cyberspace. It discusses the present international legal regime that protects fundamental freedoms on the internet. Therefore, these sections explains how cyberspace has altered the existing equation between fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech on one hand and the sovereign rights on the other. In the third section, which is the cyberspace governance. Firstly, The current major theories on cyberspace governance are discussed, along with the existing system of the cyberspace governance. Thereafter, some of topics that have rigorously debated on the international forum have been explained and clarified, such as the implication of the multi-stakeholder model, changing position of the Internet Cooperation for Assigned Names and Numbers, and the International Telecommunication Union in the present cyberspace regulation, and the feasibility of the United Nations-centric model, including explaining the idea of information society through the net, the New World Information and Communication Order. The section explores the two current parallel approaches of materialism and multi-sectorism in cyberspace regulation, as well as the approach taken under the aegis of the United Nations. Thereafter, the study discusses the various facets of international associated with cyber warfare. It discusses how the battlefield has transformed as a result of the cyber tools being used as the new weapons of war, how the magnitude and the frequency of the cyber attacks have exponentially grown over the past few decades, mandating a firm response from the international legal regime. Subsequently, it discusses how the various rules of international law relating to warfare, that's law of the use of force by states or use ad bellum, rules of international humanitarian law or jus in bello, as well as rules relating to espionage, would apply to similar activities taking place in the cyberspace. That is, the section reflects in a neutral manner the international efforts that have been taken place till now in the direction of regulations of the cyber warfare. The final section of the study, Mr. President, deals with the international legal responses dealing with the cyber crimes. After describing the nature of the cyber crimes, the section describes the significant global and regional legal responses till to date to cyber crimes. The section, through its analysis, lists out the specific reasons why there is a need to harmonize criminal laws, and presently there are various regional and international instruments that are meant to prevent, track, and punish the cyber crimes. The last publication, Mr. President, is the legality of Israel's prolonged occupation of Palestinian territory and its colonial practices therein. The present study, Mr. President, is the outcome of the mandate received through the resolution which directed the Secretariat to, among others, prepare a study on the legality of its prolonged Israeli occupation of the occupied Palestinian territory and its colonial practices therein under international law and international humanitarian law. In adherence to this directive, the present study, entitled The Legality of Israel's Prolonged Occupation of Palestinian Territories and its Colonial Practices therein, focuses on these two major questions of international law, namely occupation and colonialism, and how these concepts relate to the complex geopolitical situation of Palestine. I will now briefly summarize the study. Chapter 2 of the study briefly looks at the history of Palestine, both ancient and recent, and the events leading up to its present situation. It examines some of the issues relating to the purported historical and heritage-related claims of ownership over the Palestinians and Israel territories before attempting to flesh out some of the important and complex historical and political events that are relevant to the present legal position of the state of Palestine, as well as the progress or lack thereof which has been made over the past century in gaining Palestine its independence. Chapter 3 of this study focuses on the conceptual dimensions of occupation in international law and provides a historical and theoretical examination of the law and of occupation and its practical application to the OPT. It looks at varying approaches to understanding and identifying situations of occupation, including the functional and traditional approach that applies to them. We also, Mr. President, have Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 in this study. Of interest, Mr. President, is the conclusion of this study, which finds that the continued and prolonged occupation of Palestinians' territory is a blunt violation of international law, particularly international humanitarian law, human rights law, and law of occupation, and needs to be put to an end at the earliest possible instance. The cessation of these violations and illegal practice is a fundamental necessity for the independence of the Palestinian state, for the viability of the two-state solution, and for the security and prosperity of the Palestinian and Israeli states themselves. ALCO continues to endeavor to provide its support to the state of Palestine and Palestinian people, and it is hope of the Secretariat that this study will serve as a valuable addition to the existing literature on the subject and a useful reference point not only for member states, but for those engaged in studying the complex legal dimensions of the Palestine conflict and ultimately to aid in the realization of the independence of the Palestinian people. I now have the honor of presenting to you, Mr. President, the 4 publications to be unveiled today. Copies.
Distinguished delegates, I am advised that copies of these publications are available on your way out on the table in front of us. And
United Nations Crime Congress in Japan 2020. United Nations Crime Congress is one of the biggest international conferences on crime prevention and criminal justice, being held in every 5 years, and a forum for promoting the exchange of experience in research, law, and policy development, and the identification of emerging trends and issues in crime prevention and criminal justice. As I said, the next United Nations Crime Congress will be held in Japan in 2020. These photos show the latest United Nations Crime Congress held in Doha, Qatar in 2015. At that time, more than 4,000 experts gathered in Doha, in Qatar. And at that time, I was a member of Japan delegation for the Congress, Justice Minister of Japan, the then Justice Minister of Japan extended her cordial invitation of Japan for the 2020 Congress in the video message. Left side downward place. She is extended a cordial invitation. Next, please. Yes. United Nations Crime Congress in 2020 will be the first Congress for Japan since 1970. You can see the possible topics to be discussed in the Congress on the screen, which are closely related to the rule of law. For example, culture of lawfulness could be described as a culture to support rule of law throughout society, where citizens trust and respect the law. You can witness the reflection of a culture of lawfulness anywhere. For example, people report a crime to the police if they are victimized by serious crimes to expect the legal procedure under the law. Majority of the people may stop if the traffic light is red. Or many people offer their seats to handicapped persons in the train, even if it is not ordered by the law, or if they did not do so, they are not punished. They are not punished, but they do that. But I would like to emphasize that we should not forget, cultivate, embrace, and foster it to realize such a society where a culture of lawfulness prevails through practical and persistent methods such as education for the youth, training for criminal justice practitioners, and so on. And that would lead the society to support rule of law. I sincerely hope that Japan could be one of your partners to work together for promoting rule of law through such activities I introduced today. We are looking forward to seeing you in Japan in 2020. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Director of Asia and Far East Institute for the Prevention of Crime and the Treatment of Offenders, called UNAFE. So, Mr. Center.
By two great competent ladies. So Ambassador Kane has introduced many things about Japanese activities, and also she explained something about UNAFE. And the Justice Mateka, she's going to talk a lot about our activities in Kenya. So under the agreement between the UN and the Japanese government in 1961. And we've been operating under that agreement since 1962. Okay, next please. Well, this is the the UNAFE is in a way it's a UN affiliated institute, but in a way it's the part of the Research and Training Institute of the Ministry of Justice in Japan. So we work very closely with these institutes, especially UNODC, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, and Ministry of Justice. Okay, next please. Well, as I said, the staff members of UNAFE, they are the officials of the Ministry of Justice, and I, myself, and my deputy director, we have the background of prosecution, and we have 4 faculty members, 4 from prosecution, 2 from judiciary, 2 from correction services, 3 from probation services, and 1 police officer. So basically, we have the most staff members from the various disciplines of the criminal justice administration. And we also have several administrative staff members coming from various regions. And to help us, we have 1 American lawyer to help us finalize and revise the legal draft in English. The next, please. Well, we have several categories of activities. One is the international training courses. It's permanent. It's geographical, without any geographical limitation. In spite of our title, Asia and Far East, we invite participants also from the Africa. Many participants from the African region, also from the Latin American and Caribbean region, and also Central Asian region. And we also have the regional training courses focusing on specific region. One of them is, we have some activities in West Asia, Francophone African countries. And I visited Cote d'Ivoire this February to organize a 2-week seminar with JICA. And Matsudo-san there, she was with us. And we also have some country-focused training courses. This is bilateral courses. We have some courses with Vietnam, Nepal, and Myanmar. And we also, for regional courses, we have several courses for ASEAN countries. The next, please. Well, in addition to our training activities, we also engage in the studies and research. And we also have some United Nations related activities. As Ambassador Kane said, Japan is hosting the 2020 Congress in 2020, and UNAFE should be very much involved in this process. We are sure that we are going to organize some workshop in that event, and I think UNAFE will try to organize some alumni events, because we have thousands of alumni and many of them are coming to Japan. By the way, the city is not yet decided, so we cannot say Tokyo, Kyoto, or Yokohama, but city will be announced in months, I think. Yeah. And maybe you know that every May, the UN Commission on Crime Prevention and Community Justice is held in Vienna, and we also participate there. And UNAFE has many sister institutes. One of them is located in Thailand Institute of Justice. They are the very new member of this United Nations Program Institute Network, and we have some sister institutes in Beijing and Seoul. And we have a lot in Europe and American regions. So whenever we go to Vienna to attend the UN Commission, we also have the coordinating meetings with these PNI colleagues. Yes. Well, I think I should be very brief. So these are the international training courses. The detailed international training courses. Usually we have 20 to 30 participants per course, and we also have 5 or 6 Japanese participants. And all the participants stay in UNAFE premises for 5 to 6 weeks. They stay together. We have the boarding house, and we have the cafeteria, so they eat every 3 meals in our institute. And in addition to all those official activities during daytime, they also enjoy karaoke during nighttime. And it is called Lounge B, and Lounge B is very famous. Yes. So next, please. Yes. This is the outline of the regular training courses and seminars we held in last year. So we had the training courses on the theme as children as victims and witnesses, or treatment of juvenile delinquents, or juvenile offenders and UN standards. So basically last year we focused on children. And we also have the criminal justice training courses for Vietnam, and also the Japan-Nepal Joint Research Seminar in Criminal Justice. Next, please. And we organized the ASEAN Good Governance Seminar. It's basically on corruption, and we focused on the international cooperation in investigation of corruption cases, mutual legal assistance. And we also have the Francophone African Seminar, and we have some seminar on community-based offenders for the CLMV countries, that is Cambodia, Laos, People's Republic, Myanmar, and Vietnam. And this is, we organized this in cooperation with the Thai authorities, and we organized these training courses in Bangkok. And we also have the Myanmar prison reform training program, and so on. The next, please. Yes, this is for you. We organize some activities on treatment of juvenile offenders in Kenya, and I'm sure Justin Matika is here to talk more on this. Next, please. Yes, this is the characteristics of UNIFE activities. We basically our activities have several pillars. One is the lecture by UNIFE faculty members, and we talk about the UN standards. UN standards and also Japanese systems, and we invite a lot of visiting experts from all over the world. They are the real experts. And also we have the individual presentation by each country, and they present all the good practices or challenges they have, and after that they engage in the group discussion to find some common goals. And we also organize a lot of visits to real institutions, in addition to some cultural visits to some temples in Kyoto or the Peace Memorial Park in Hiroshima. The next, please. Yes, this is this explains our present activities. So this year, in 2017, we focus on the organized criminals and terrorists. So this year we have 3 courses focusing on the organized criminal and terrorism, but our winter course will focus on rule of law. So I just wanted to inform you about that. The next, please. Yeah, this is also the continuation of the explanation. The next, please. Yes. So winter we do the course on the rule of law. This is for senior officials. So we expect the participating senior officials to discuss and come up with something about the rule of law. The next, please. Yes, thank you very much. Well, by the way, the photo on top is our present building, and we are moving to a new building as of this October. We are moving to a little bit bigger places. I hope many of not only you, but your colleagues or your staff members. If you are interested in sending your staff members to UNIFE, please consult us or JICA so we can offer you more information. Thank you very much for your attention.
Welcome, Honorable Lady Justice Teresia Mungua Mateka, Judge in the High Court of Kenya, former UNIFE trainee in 2006, where she took a training team under the Children Act in order to strengthen the functional juvenile justice system in the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Lady Justice, you have the floor, Madam.
Thank you. If I can just emphasize that. In 2001, I think the Children Act was passed, and then the following year, there was, in my country, in Kenya, there was the Chief Justice then appointed magistrates to handle children cases. And that time the law was very specific that magistrates would be appointed for different provinces, different areas. So I happened to be among the first magistrates to be appointed for Western, at that time I was working in Western Province, for that province. The new act was quite diverse, as if you get to see it, Chapter 141 of the Laws of Kenya. And it had a lot of new things or challenging things for magistrates. A new Child's Bill of Rights, inculcating the best interest principle, and what I began to call the collaboration principle, provided at Section 4 of the same law. And upon my appointment, I was transferred to another province. That was Rift Valley by then. Now we have counties. And I was taken there and I was put in charge of the Children's Court. And what happened is that here I was newly appointed. I attended a 3-day workshop to prepare me to be a children magistrate and with a new law to implement. So it was a challenge. And one of the things I noticed was that the system was, we had a new law requiring a lot to be done, but the system was broken up. Each one of us was doing different things. If you know the children's, rather in the juvenile justice system, there are many agencies. There is the court, there are the prosecutors, there are the probation officers, the children officers, the police, the other institutions. And the most challenging thing then was, how do we get everyone to work together so that the child is not treated as a different, you know, how do I say it, a different entity by every institution? Because that was the challenge, that the child comes to court, we treat them differently. They are the police station, they are treated differently by the police, they apply different standards. They are before the, with the probation officer, they have their own standards. So there was that kind of thing, but the act required, in our view, rather in my view, that the child be treated in a different way, that we apply certain standards, which included the UNCRC and the African Charter standards to that situation. And with those challenges, I began to look at how to get everyone where I was working to work together, and to bring everyone together, and to implement certain things, ensuring, for example, that there were social inquiries as required, ensuring that every child was treated as a child if they came to court, even if they committed an offense, ensuring that as a judicial officer, I knew what was happening in the institutions around me, and of course coming up with a system together with the local law society to ensure that children got presentation by pro bono lawyers. So it was quite a handful. And I think all these activities I was trying to do are what made my employer choose me to attend the training, because there were these small little things that I was trying to do. Maybe I can get my water. Yes. Thank you very much. So, sorry about that. In 2006 then, we got I got selected. I was working in Nakuru by that time, as I said earlier, and I went to Japan. All those things that that time we were calling him Professor Center was talking about UNAFE happened. You know, the teaching, the lectures, the visiting the institutions, the practical exposure to the juvenile justice system in Japan. I think for us, we were 12 of us. If you can move to the next slide, I think it has a lot of details about that. We were 12 of us, chosen from the 5, we call them the 5 main juvenile justice agencies. That's probation, police, prisons, judiciary, and the Department of Children's Services. And we had not worked together at all. The 12, apart maybe from working together in your own different institution, but as a team we had never worked together. So we met at the airport and we went to Japan, and we were exposed to all these things, and particularly the issue of collaboration, you know, networking together to deal with issues of delinquency. Because the question was, how do we get ourselves to work together as a team, and when we get back home, to continue doing the same? That here we are in Japan, sitting in the same classroom, learning the same things, you know, and solving problems together, and coming up with a work plan on how to go and implement those things back in our country. Definitely, there were many things that happened. Here we had magistrates working with, you know, in the same class with police officers. You know how those things work, that there are certain barriers that naturally exist, but those had to be broken. We had to learn to break those. And we learned many things. We were exposed to many things. Some of them we were already doing them at different levels, but others, especially the issue of collaboration, was very important to us, because it was something that we saw we could do when we got back home. And then, of course, something else. If you looked at the faculty at UNAFE, it's made up of different professionals, and we were like, how does that work? At home, it hasn't happened yet. How does it work? And what happened is that when we came back home, now we had to try and put it down. One is the fact that there is that cross-pollination of skills, of knowledge from the police, from the magistrate, from the prison officer, and how to put that together. And what happened is that through the support of UNAFE, we came up with a training program Center-San did not mention it, but the capacity building project for child care and protection officers. This is a program that saw magistrates, probation officers, police officers, prison officers, children officers sitting in the same classroom and learning the same things, so that we would have a standard way of handling children. The curriculum was prepared by those officers together. We had to form a team to do that. We came up with the training curriculum, training manuals, all those things. I have some samples there. And training the TOTs and training ourselves using the UNAFE model, so that we'll be able to have more people exposed to that training than when you only take 12 to Japan. And what happened is that in the 4 years that we had the support of JICA, the first class was a class of 80, mixed group. The second class had 70, then we had 35 and 40. So that's about 250 people working together. And the way it was organized was regional, so that you have people training together and going back to implement these things, together. And that, of course, has its own impact, because you have officers who have the same standards doing handling children at different levels. I mean, at different levels, at the police station, in the courtroom, at the prison, in the institution, but applying the same standards. So the child does not feel like they are broken up. So that was something that we picked from there. And it's been ongoing until recently, when I think JICA left, then DOK took it over. We had 2 other trainings after that. When you go to places where you have officers who have gone through that training, you will definitely see a difference in the way children are handled, or the way they set up their systems, because people had to sit down and come up with work plans on how to ensure that what you learn is implemented on the ground. Of course, there was other things that we picked up, particularly the fact that you can go to a seminar and sit an exam after that seminar. It's not normal that it's not the normal thing to go to a workshop or a training like a seminar, but you sit an exam and get a certificate at the end of the day. But that was inculcated in this training. And then there is also the practical bit of it, that what we learned from there and what we picked up, that you sit down, you learn, you put up a work plan, you go out there, implement, you are supervised, and there's a report. You have to do all those things. That has had its own impact on the way the juvenile justice system works here. And of course, there have been other things from my own personal experience that have, I think, maybe I can say I have implemented or impacted on differently. One of the things was getting involved with coming up with a curriculum for judicial officers handling children cases, so that it could be implemented by the Judiciary Training Institute. And that was, a byproduct of the training in UNAFE and this CCPO program. And then, of course, this CCPO program has also inspired other people to see how we can have people who are professionally trained to handle children. And in 2016, last year, a curriculum was launched by Pwani University and an organization called ASIC. ASIC is the Association of Charitable Institutions in Kenya, who noticed that they run institutions which are not run by professionals, and they hold children. And an inspiration came out of this program, the CCPO program, and a team was put together, basically also of alumni from UNAFE. Quite a number of them were from UNAFE. And we came up with a curriculum, assisting the university to come up with a curriculum for degree and diploma and certificate on child care and protection. So therefore, there is, I can say that that training assisted to a certain extent to help us improve on what we already had, and of course to inspire us to do much more. It's the work of many years. It cannot be said in a few minutes, but I wish to stop there and wait for questions. Thank you very much.
Really
very valuable to the work of ALCO, and not only because the rule of law is also part and parcel of work program of ALCO, but it extends other activities which really ought to be done under the ALCO mandates. That said, I also want to again thank the government of Japan, because I had the opportunity to visit Japan in February this year, and I had really privilege to visit UNAFE, to see the karaoke room, and I even had a short discussion with participants, and it was amazing, because it was really a group of participants coming from about, I think, 16 countries, some from Brazil and some from Kenya. I was not very happy because I didn't find someone from Tanzania, but I was told that there has been a time where Tanzania. So I really commend what we are doing, and I look forward to ALCO working with UNAFE, JICA, and the government of Japan in general. Thank you very much.
With regard to anti-corruption and activities, maybe wanted to share with you what you're doing in Kenya in terms of fighting corruption and organized crime. In Kenya, we recognize that no one institution can work alone. So in 2015 November, His Excellency the President put us together as the law enforcement agencies, and we're working as multi-agency approach, where we have all the institutions who are law enforcement, that is the NIS, the intelligence, the investigators and prosecutors sitting together in terms of serious organized corruption cases and economic cases, where we do the investigation coordinated manner, and we're able to then follow the assets. I did not hear you talk about asset recovery, and this is a key thing towards fighting corruption, and I think this is one, I hope this is one of the topics that you take forward in 2020. I was there in Crime Congress, and hopefully I'll be there in the next 2 weeks in Vienna, and I think it's very important for us, because here we have had some cases and have tried to get cooperation, especially international cooperation in terms of our investigation in the Asian countries, where we're trying to get our evidence, where some of the stolen or the trafficked wildlife is taken there, and we're not able to get the proper evidence where we can effectively prosecute. So as a country, on behalf of Kenya, we plead that in that area, because you're in charge of international cooperation, with assist us, because our cases then get thrown out because of lack of evidence. And then in terms of child protection, juvenile protection, child online sex protection is key. Here in Kenya, we have set up a unit since a year ago, which has managed to investigate 115 cases, is doing very well. What we have is a cooperation between the British government, where they've sent us experts who are training our police officers, who are able to bring down these sites and are able to catch these criminals who are actually taking away our most precious citizen of the world, who are the children. So I would hope that those are two areas which we could put some little bit more effort, because there are new areas where police officers, social protection, judicial officers need a lot of expertise in handling, especially with regard to the victim and offender issues, because it's not just the victim, the offenders need a certain treatment and certain integration into society. Thank you very much.
Legal and Treaties Division, Minister of External Affairs of the Government of India, but also His Excellency Mr. Samuel Yale, former High Commissioner of Ghana to India, for their valuable guidance and support in fulfilling the mandate entrusted on me during their tenure as President and Vice President, respectively. I wish also to thank all the member states for unanimously electing me as the Secretary General of this esteemed organization in May last year, and give me confidence in my leadership and giving me opportunity to work towards strengthening Asian-Africa solidarity in international legal affairs. Excellencies, I would also like to express my gratitude to member governments for their constant encouragement, support, and participation in all activities pertaining to the agenda of ALCO, and to the ambassadors and high commissioners, liaison officers who are based in New Delhi, for their valuable inputs in dealing with substantive and organizational matters, and for the kind support rendered to me, which has helped me in discharging my duties and functions in a smooth and effective manner. Special thanks also are due to the member states for paying their annual contribution in timely manner, and to those states who have started partial payment of their arrears. A robust financial situation would facilitate Secretariat in fulfilling the mandate entrusted to it by the Member States. Ever since I assumed the office in August last year, it has been an eventful one for ALCO and has proved to be extremely busy and fruitful as well. For fruition of these activities, in addition to the Member States, I would also like to thank the various international organizations and other academic institutions which have collaborated with ALCO in organizing these events. Mr. President, I would briefly like to highlight some of the important parts of my report, namely, consideration of the work program of ALCO. Second, major activities undertaken since the last annual session. Third, financial situation of ALCO and administrative matters. And fourth, steps taken to revitalize and strengthen ALCO. And five, future plan of action and the concluding remarks. Allow me now, Mr. President, to start on consideration of the work program of ALCO at the 56th annual session. It may be recalled that since 42nd annual session, which was held in Seoul, Republic of Korea in 2003, the organization has adopted a policy of rationalization of agenda items. Adhering to this policy, the following topics, therefore, shortlisted for the 56th session based on the current relevance. 1. The status and the treatment of refugees. 2. Violations of international law in Palestine and other occupied territories by Israel and other international legal issues related to the question of Palestine. 3. Violent extremism and terrorism, legal aspects. And 4. International law in cyberspace. Finally, as per long-established practice, a half-day special meeting on selected items on the agenda of the International Law Commission will also be convened. There will also be a special meeting on the International Criminal Court recent developments. Mr. President, regarding activities and the mandate undertaken since last annual session, the second session, I will be reporting briefly on ALCO's major activities since then. Allow me to begin by informing you that the second session of China ALCO Exchange and Research Program in International Law was held at the China University of Political Science and Law in Beijing, People's Republic of China, from 29th August to 16th September 2016. It was a 3-week session which had participation by 37 trainees comprising of an assortment of diplomats and members of the respective governments, foreign affairs and justice ministries from 34 ALCO member states. Two members from the ALCO Secretariat also attended the training. As the Secretary General of ALCO, I was also invited by the Government of People's Republic of China to attend the inauguration ceremony of the program, and I also delivered an address as the Secretary General of ALCO. Mr. President, one of the important and long-established practices of ALCO is to hold a legal advisors meeting on the sidelines of the session of the United Nations General Assembly. The theme of 2016's meetings was the UN Charter, We Care. On 25th October 2016, I attended the dialogue with judges of the International Court of Justice, which was held at the United Nations headquarters in New York, where presentations were made by various judges, including His Excellency Judge Ron Abraham, the President of the International Court of Justice, His Excellency Judge Abdul Qawab Ahmed Yusuf, Vice President of the International Court of Justice, His Excellency Judge Antonio Agustino Canoda Trinidad of the International Court of Justice. Likewise, on the 2nd November 2016, we organized legal advisors meeting. At this occasion, several presentations were made. I was privileged at this meeting also to deliver a presentation entitled The Identification of Customary International Law, Legal and Policy Implications. Likewise, In November and December 2016, I had an opportunity to visit the Regional Center for International Commercial Arbitration in Cairo, Egypt, and the Nairobi Center for International Arbitration here in Nairobi, respectively. The latter visit to Nairobi was in aid of the launch of the Nairobi Center as the 5th Regional Center for Arbitration under the auspices of ALCO. In December 2016, ALCO also commemorated its 60th Constitution Day, wherein the President of the 55th Annual Session, Dr. V.D. Sharma, traced the organization's origins and development and its rich history while outlining its continued relevance. Excellencies, in February of this year, I paid an official visit to Japan at the invitation of the government of Japan and met with the officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, including the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Japan, His Excellency Mr. Fumio Kishida, representative for Japan to ALCO and Ambassador for International Economic Affairs, His Excellency Koji Haneda, and the Director of the International Legal Affairs Bureau, Madam Naoki Saiki. In all these cases, it was opportunity to discuss modalities on further strengthening the existing relationship between ALCO and Japan. I had also opportunity to visit and meet with officials of Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, including the Executive Senior Vice President, Mr. Kazuhiko Koshikawa, and we discussed the possibility of convening a capacity building program for the Asian and African countries. While in Japan, I also participated in the 3rd International Symposium on the Law of the Sea with the theme 20 Years of Development of the Law of the Sea and Emerging Challenges. This event was hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, and on the 2nd and 3rd February, I made presentation on the theme called the Transnational Organized Crime at Sea, Trafficking of Migrants and Drugs. I also had opportunity to visit the Center for Asia Legal Exchange at Nagoya University and the United Nations Asia and Far East Institute for the Prevention of Crimes and the Treatment of Offenders, UNAFE. In both cases, I seized the opportunity to discuss various possibilities for collaboration between those institutions and ALCO. Excellencies, as mandated by the 55th Annual Session, the second meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group on International Law in Cyberspace took place over 2 days at the headquarters in Delhi on 9th and 10th February 2017. The meeting took place over 6 sessions, which focused on 4 major areas within the topic of international law in cyberspace, as it was flagged by the member states of ALCO. This included 1. State sovereignty in cyberspace, 2. Law and governance of cyberspace, 3. Cyber warfare, and 4. Cybercrime and international law. In the last session, the special study in cyberspace was introduced by the Secretariat. It was also proposed in this session by the rapporteur of the working group, Professor Wang, that he would prepare a special report on the topic within which he would be exploring the future work priority and outcome of the working group, such as prospective ALCO guidelines or model provision on the cyberspace. As per the applicable statutory rules of ALCO in this regard, Mr. President, the outcome of this second meeting of the open-ended working group is to be reported during this annual session by the chairman of the working group. Excellencies, in addition to these activities, I also had the opportunity to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Hague Conference on Private International Law. This was done while I was in China, attending the second China ALCO program in September 2016. Also, in December 2016, I had the pleasure of signing another memorandum of understanding with the China University of Political Science and Law in New Delhi. Mr. President, Excellencies, allow me to present on financial and administrative matters of ALCO. I am pleased to inform that the financial situation in 2016 was relatively stable. The details of such can be found in the conference document, ALCO 56, Nairobi 2017, or RG 2. Though there has been persistent problem of arrears, large strides have been made with respect to the payment of these arrears by member states, and I express my profound gratitude to these member states for complying with their financial obligations. Statistics of the past 3 years, 2014, 2015, and 2016, shows that arrears are corrected at the rate of 9%, 18%, and 2% respectively. At the same time, annual contribution received stands at the percentage of 62% in 2014, 73% in 2015, and 63% in 2016. I would like also to draw your attention to the budget approved for presentation at this current session by the liaison officer for the year 2018, which is United States dollars 615,000 US dollars. There is an increase of 300,000 from the 2017 budget. This increase reflects the necessary adjustment made under certain heads and subheads based on the expenses likely to be incurred. It also took into account consideration and discussions which were held in the subcommittee of the liaison officers of ALCO on the ALCO Secretariat, Human Resources and Financial Matters, and reflected the Secretariat efforts to minimize expenses such as electricity and the water expenses, which were reduced by United States dollar 6,000. In addition to that, for consideration on the budget proposal for the year 2018, it is important to note that the government of India had already implemented the 7th Pay Commission